walk in. We have a few that walk in the door, but they walk in the door for a reason, because of something they've seen or heard, or a referral by an agency or an individual. But the best prospects and the deals that we're most successful in completing come from referrals from other folks who are in a similar or related business. And those are relationships that the EDC is always out doing what we call retention visits, which means that we spend a lot of time talking to the businesses that are here, and to find out what their needs are and how they're doing and what can we do to help. And then when that happens, we put on our troubleshooter hat or our welcome wagon hat or whatever it is to be able to bring to the table the kinds of resources that we don't have them within ourselves, but we know who those folks might be that can help.
Right.
And this just being a big community, all for one and one for all. So that's part of our retention, and a lot of referrals come to us that way. We like to recruit according to supply chain. Supply chain, if you're a company that, for instance, builds a certain a piece of equipment, there are things that you need. You need metal workers, you need welders, you need raw materials, and you need all these different things. What we try to do and are trying to do during the next year is go after the supply chain side of things and bring in the people you want to do business with, or the people who you already do business with, if you're existing industry. Because then it makes things tighter, and it makes them more efficient, and it makes them more economical for everyone concerned. And so that's something. We get a lot of calls because of our website. If you go to our website, which is www.caldwelledc.org,
We'll put that on the screen.
you can go to a tab that shows buildings and sites that are available for sale or lease, and all of them available for development. It's not 100%. Every single piece of property that's out there and available is not in there. And if someone has a piece of property that's not represented but would like it to be in there, all they have to do is contact us. And with the owner's permission, we will put it on our site. It helps us to have an inventory.
Right.
And then some folks don't want to deal with telephone calls and realtors and you know, the public calling about their property, so they'll sometimes let us know that their property is available. And when we have a prospect who it makes a good candidate, we'll contact them on their behalf.
Right.
We're not realtors. We don't get paid commissions. We will show a site, and we will put together whatever the marketing materials are that someone provides for us. But a lot of times our relationships start as a result of them seeing a piece of property on our website and then wanting to discuss it, or simply saying, can you show us everything in this range? And I would add that it used to be almost 100% of our prospects came wanting an existing building, because they knew that we were a community that had a lot of buildings that might be reutilized, repurposed. And now we're starting to get companies coming in saying they want a greenfield site, which means something that's never had a business on it, so they want to do new construction. So we're very hopeful that in the very near future, Caldwell will start to see new construction taking place on some of our primary roads, which would be really, really nice. And much like when the Broyhill building was occupied, the hope that that represented, this will help add in very much that same way. It really would.
Right.
We work very closely with the State Department of Commerce, and Advantage West works with them as well. And we do get leads from them. They'll have someone who says, we want to come to North Carolina and we're looking for, and they're either looking for something in our region, or they're looking for, oftentimes we get people who are looking for our workforce. Last week I showed two parties around last week who were interested in woodworking and craftsman workforces, and they were coming specifically to Caldwell County because of it. Now, one of those companies is from Amsterdam. And the folks at Commerce had done their homework and told them where the largest accumulation of woodworking and craftsman type people would be. And Caldwell County was one of those. And so we showed them a number of buildings based on just that fact. And then we go out and talk to, we do recruit based on certain categories, but the days of going to every show for every different type of industry are kind of by the wayside for us. Those haven't been the most productive, especially in terms of dollars and cents
You're talking
spent.
about trade shows, that type
Yes,
of thing.
trade shows. Because when your inventory starts to shrink, you don't have as much you can talk about. You might get someone interested in the area, but if you don't have a building, then you're really almost misleading them. And so we prefer to work with folks now in this way, as I have described, and it's turned out to work pretty good for the last little bit. And we'll do that as long as it's working, and when it stops, we will change.
You'll try something else.
And we will do something else that works.
Yeah. So that's how the contacts typically come in a lot of various different ways.
Right.
And I imagine each project is different. And so, I know this is probably going to be maybe kind of a difficult question, but then what happens? Once they make that initial contact with you, once you start showing them, once they tell you what their needs are, what they're looking for, and you start showing them what's available, then how does the process typically go? And I understand that it's probably different from everyone.
It is different, but it's kind of like you build a relationship with a person. Every relationship is different. And that's what we do. We build a relationship with the company, and we talk to them about everything that they might need in order to make their selection of Caldwell County not just a strong possibility, but to make it a commitment. And one of the things that happens is that folks come in needing answers to questions, not necessarily needing help for anything, but for instance, they'll ask, well, what about banking in your area? They'll want to know who the banks are. Is there venture capital in your area? Are there people who would like to be partners and investors in our area? And are there groups where they can sit in front of those folks and meet them? Are there grants available? And we go down the list of what their questions are, and then we go back to the drawing board. And it's kind of like being a puzzle, having a puzzle in front of you. Sometimes we don't know what the puzzle's supposed to look like when it's finished, but we know that all the puzzle pieces have to fit together. And in the end, if the customer is happy, and it's an extremely competitive process these days, we know that every person who comes here is looking someplace else too. We developed a brand new ad campaign last year that has the picture of a globe on a black midnight sky that simply says they could have chosen anywhere in the world, and they did. They chose Caldwell County. And when you look at the businesses who are here and the fact that first of all, they come from all over the world.
All over the world.
But they could go anywhere in the world because there are people everywhere just dying to have a new business in their community, especially manufacturing businesses. And so we are very aware that we could lose them quickly when we're sitting and talking to them because they're talking to other people. Other states are so competitive. Last year when we were working on one deal, we had another state call the company and say, we want to add an additional $500,000 if you will sign and come today. And they were here visiting with us when this occurred. And we don't have those kinds of resources. And people always like to think that when we use the word incentive, that a lot of people are afraid that what I just described is what we do, and we don't. We don't have those kinds of resources. And truthfully, we don't need those kinds of resources to land a customer because, as what I've described to you, we build relationships with people, and it's not them having a relationship with Deborah Murray, it's them having a relationship with Luann and with the mayor and with Jeff Branch and whoever it is that we bring to the table that represents our government and our utilities and our school system and our community college, our fire department. We bring those people to the table so that they can ask us questions. If a technology-oriented company comes in, then we bring Google in. We'll have somebody from Google sitting at the table so that they can say, how do you like it here?
Mm-hmm.
And Google says, we love it here. We've expanded here. And they can ask even tougher questions like, what's it like filling a workforce from this area? That could be a tough question, but it's not one we're worried about Google answering, because they're at the table and they'll talk honestly and openly. And we love it when they say the first group of people they hired from the community college's first training class for Google employees, every single one of those people are still there working at Google. That was back in 2007, 8. So it's been a long time, long enough for them to really value our community and what we have to offer. So when we sit down with folks, they may have any number of different questions or needs, but for the most part, what we do is we build a relationship with them and help them build relationships and partnerships with others in the community, so that when they do decide to come, they're coming because they want to and because they know we want them. We've been very fortunate to have people come from even counties very close by who say, we cannot believe how much you folks are genuine in wanting us to come, because we don't get treated like this by other communities. And then you'll hear someone say, I came from another county close by, and not only do they want you here while they're negotiating with you, but they want you here after you're already here. And that makes us feel good, because they're friends we've made, and we want them to be happy here, and we want them to stay for a long time.
Now, you mentioned the word incentives. And so let's talk about incentives, because a lot of people, you know, I think they either don't understand them, so they automatically distrust it, or don't like hearing about it. But talk about incentives and the reality of incentives in the business world today.
Well, not only incentives in the business world today, but let's talk about incentives in Caldwell County, because incentives in Caldwell County are different than what you might read about. We aren't able to do, as I said before, for instance, what the other state
Make the
did.
call at the last minute, yeah.
Because that's just a tactic to get someone who's teetering to sign. And you will hear me say that an incentive is not going to be the only reason that a company chooses to go anywhere, because they want to be happy where they go, and they want to have the business climate and the opportunity to be profitable. An incentive is a birthday check. It's gone. When you look at it, what an incentive amounts to in terms of dollars and cents, it's not very much money when you consider what a business is going to invest to come to any community. So we call it the I word here, because it's the I word because
it could be a four-letter word on its own.
It is a four-letter word for some people. We, first of all, have a great incentives policy in Caldwell County. It's very straightforward. It's written so that it's not subjective. If I like you as a prospect more than you over here, I'm still going to do the same thing for you as I'm going to do for the other. So it doesn't require a lot of it just is what it is. You apply for it. We go through several different steps in order to approve an incentive, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we have a local jobs incentive. And the local jobs incentive is for manufacturing companies, manufacturing and transportation, distribution, that sort of thing. And the reason why we don't incentivize other business, we don't incentivize retail, we don't incentivize restaurants, we don't incentivize, I don't know, you could name something, but if they're not a manufacturer, we don't incentivize it. And here's why. A manufacturer requires other companies to support it. So if I can get one manufacturer, then there is a multiplier effect, and we know that depending on the business, the multiplier effect could mean as many as 3, 4, 5, 6 other jobs will be created with the investment brought to us by the one.
Right.
When a wood grain millwork comes, there are going to be other businesses that benefit from their being here, the lumber mills, you know, the kilns, the truck driving folks. They require other businesses to substantially support their efforts. They become their suppliers or their customers, and that's why, again, we focus on supply chain and recruitment.
Okay.
But in this particular case, we're going to incentivize at $2,000 a job for each job created over a 1-year period of time.
So make sure we explain that exactly right. That means for one job created, that company will receive $2,000, but they have to create that job usually within the 1-year period.
Well, within the
varies.
1-year period of time. Now, if we sign a deal and you have to build a building and I give you 1 year, you're not going to have your building built in a year's time.
So that varies.
Yeah, it does vary, but they have a 1 year's time of being up and running and hiring and in business in order to create their jobs.
And that's a one-time $2,000.
$2,000 for that one job.
That one job.
But you can keep coming back as your company grows, provided that you hold on to all the jobs that you created in the past. And here's how we do that. We don't pay anybody up front for the local jobs incentive. I can tell you, I'll give you $2,000 a job, and you can tell me I'm going to create 1,000 jobs. We're not going to pay you $2,000 for your 1,000 jobs until you've created them.
1,000 jobs.
That's right. And so the way we do that is the state has a report that you have to fill out every quarter. And it's called the North Carolina Unemployment Insurance Report. It's the report that lists your people. And so we're able to know how many jobs you maintained. And we look at those quarterly reports to make sure that we know how many jobs did you have and how many jobs did you add and did you hold on to them. And this is key for us. When we pay you, you have to hold on to those jobs for still another year. So we win when you create the job and when those folks are working. But we get to continue to win because they're going to keep that job for an additional year. And then that becomes part of our business community.
Where does that $2,000 come from?
The $2,000 comes from taxes. And they come from what we call the sales tax reinvestment fund. And the municipalities in Caldwell County contribute different amounts depending on which community into a fund, and then that fund is available for us to set aside monies for companies that are going to expand. Now, some folks tease and say, I wish I was you, Deborah, and sitting on these millions of dollars. We don't have millions of dollars. What we have access to is nothing. We are able to go before, we go through the EDC board and we describe our project and we get their endorsement for the project. And we tell them all the things I've told you today. Numbers of jobs, average wages, private investment, and then they decide whether or not to endorse the project. When they do, it goes to the Sales Tax Reinvestment Committee, where there's a representative from each municipality, a voting member from each municipality, who hears the same project description and then is able to vote to endorse or not that project to set aside funds for their local jobs incentive. And then if that happens, we go to the public hearing in front of the county commissioners, where the public is invited to come and speak up if they oppose a local jobs incentive to,
whatever company.
And basically, because we have this policy and it's been set and we look at companies for basically 1 year at a time, we're not asking them to look in their crystal balls and be really optimistic about what they could, because even if they are overly optimistic in what they represent to us, we don't pay them for their optimism. We pay them for the reality. The job that they create after a year's time that's the one that we'll pay for. Now, the little details of that are, we can't do it for less, we don't do any project for less than 5 jobs. But there's no maximum to it. If you're going to create 500 or 5 jobs, you know, it doesn't matter. And if you create those jobs this year, and then you're going to create some more the next year, you can come back and go through the same process again and be eligible, if approved, to do the same thing. Now, when we do it, we have an agreement that you'll sign that says, I agree to these terms, I will submit my NC 101s to be verified, the job, because that allows us to be accountable to the public. Because after all, we might be using sales tax dollars, but they're still taxpayer dollars. They're my dollars, your dollars, that have been set aside for this purpose. And some communities don't have this fund. And so they have to go to their local government's fund balance and get those funds. And they have, in order to compete, sometimes an incentive is necessary. Again, think about it. If you had a company that was going to invest millions and you were going to offer them $2,000 per job for 50 employees, that's $100,000. It is not a game changer